Good morning from the KTN News Center here in Nairobi on this first day of November 2020. It is good to be back, and I do hope you're having a good Sunday. This is Inside Politics here on KTN News, Kenya's premier Sunday morning political broadcast. A Sunday we take a look at how the BBI debate is shaping up. Those not convinced about the final BBI report want some issues ironed out before we can even begin to talk about a referendum. But proponents are having none of it and want a vote by mid-2021. Will it be possible to have a non-contested referendum? Meanwhile, the 2022 general election is just around the corner, and despite his boss accusing him of racing in the opposite direction without a baton just a few days ago, Deputy President William Ruto has been touring Kenyatta's backyard, central Kenya, again. He will dissect the complex political matrix in Mount Kenya. At the same time, just like his predecessors, Ali Hassan Mwinyi, the late Benjamin William Mkapa, and Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, John Pombe Joseph Magufuli has been elected for his second term as president of the United Republic of Tanzania. But the Tanzanian political opposition is crying foul. Just what is happening at what was once known as an oasis of peace, democracy, and political stability on the continent. Stay with us for the next 120 minutes as we dissect the biggest political and policy issues in the Republic. To help me do that, I have with me in studio, joining me, of course, virtually, Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst, communication strategist Mark Bichachi, governance expert Esbon Owila, and youth policy analyst Gloria Oroba. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Good to see you again. Shall be coming to you in just a few moments. Let's get into it. Confidence of President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga have been telling Kenyans that the Constitution Amendment Bill is signed and sealed. The message seems to be that the next stop will be the referendum, which should happen by March 2021. In separate media briefings, Jubilee Vice Chairman David Murathe and ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna have said that calls to reopen the debate on BBI issues is a tactic by BBI opponents to derail the referendum and will not be entertained. Let's begin with KTN senior political reporter Duncan Hamb.
After Monday's BBI validation report launch at the Bomas of Kenya, the train has left the station insofar as the road to the referendum 2021 goes. Two confidants of both President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga have described as almost nil chances for those calling for further consultations on BBI.
Kama ni mambo ya policy, sawa. Hiyo iendelee kule kwenye cabinet. Mambo ya proposed legislative changes ifanywe ndani ya bunge na wafanye ile wanaita public participation. But as far as the constitutional amendment bill that is contained in this document is concerned, this is the bill that starts from page 57 of the report. This bill is sealed. The constitutional amendment bill, we are not going to reopen these discussions that have taken 2 years.
And it will be done the way it is, the way it has come. This is a report which has come from the task force. There is no way it will be reopened. Anybody trying to tell you that they are going to have any further conversation about this document, they are deceiving themselves. They had an opportunity.
On Thursday, a section of senators under Team Kenya formation held consultations with ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi, leaders who are calling for a window to be opened for consensus building. But according to Murathe, that school of thought has ulterior motive.
The people who are clamoring to have another team so that they can reopen it are just tactics for delaying this process. And this process, the timelines which are being looked at, depending on how quickly we get the signatures for validation by the IEBC, I don't see this thing going beyond March, April next year.
It was referred to as work in progress. So it's not a dead end itself. And I think that everybody is welcome, is invited to review.
Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i has ordered regional and county commanders to toe the line and avoid engaging in active politics.
In the practice of government, we queue behind our president. Our president is the leader, and when our president takes a position, we queue behind that position. And for us in the security sector, we are the ones who stand ahead of the queue. For us, we support the BBI report and the discussion that is going on. In the field, we will facilitate political leaders, and I'm choosing my words carefully. We will facilitate the political leaders as they discuss the matter, as they organize people, as they work with them.
As they say, the die seems to be cast. Duncan Hemba, KTN News.
Right, let me begin with you, Mark Bichachi. The early grandstanding that we are seeing concerning this BBI debate, proponents saying that there is nothing that there is to talk about. It's just the road to the referendum. While we are seeing some part of the political divide saying they want some of those issues ironed out first. What are you seeing here, and how does it shape up in the debate on whether or not to have consensus or to have a contested referendum?
Ben, I would like to welcome you back. It's been a while, karibu sana. But I'll be remiss if I do not analyze this particular issue through the lens of the interests of the politicians, because as we know, politics is about interest. So the question is, what is the interest of those who want to delay the conversation and those who want to immediately move to a referendum? The interest for these people is this. The interest number one is that they are desperate to ensure that there is no referendum before 2022 in which they will have to campaign for a no vote. Simply because that means expending a lot of money trying to win a no referendum, while at the same time being hardly a year away from a presidential election. So for them, they would very much rather delay the referendum as much as possible so that they're able to focus on the presidential ambitions. On the other side, those ones who want a referendum want it quickly so that they're able to make sure that before the 2022 elections, the realities of which the BBI report portends will be real for them. So in other words, there'll be a prime minister position. In other words, there'll be devolved funds up to 35%. And this is all about interest. So if you stand to gain from the BBI, then you want it to happen as quickly as possible. But if you're running on 2022 and you're anti-BBI, then either you stop it completely, and if you are afraid of going to a referendum, that what you need to find immediately is a way of delaying it from happening, which is why they're calling for reopening of negotiations. Why this is important, though, is simply because we need to realize that William Ruto, these senators, everyone who's calling for a delay, had an opportunity to present before BBI, and they chose not to, waiting for just this opportunity.
All right. Thank you for that. Hesbon, what is your school of thought? Do you think some of these things should be reopened and looked at, or it's time to go to the poll?
I think from where I sit, this was a discussion that originated from the people. And the task force essentially just put together the wishes of the Kenyans who are proactive enough and were careful enough to understand that this was a process that touched on their lives and gave their views. And the document in itself has the legislative bills that are proposed, which can be debated in Parliament. And then the Constitution Amendment Bill 2020, which from where I sit, if we open the discussion, we will be opening a very inconclusive discussion. Because not everyone is going to agree on everything. And that's why this is a bill, and because it touches on the Bill of Rights, the structure of our government, constitutional commissions, it's a bill that will still come back to Kenyans in a referendum. So there is no reason why leaders should start a conversation that originated from Kenyans, and Kenyans will still have a final say. We are technically going to have a say in whether this bill passes to change the constitution or not. And I think the politicians who are interested in opening the debate again are essentially looking for a delay tactic, just like Mark Bichachi is saying. And if you look at the conversations that they are having in the public domain, they're also trying to package that conversation in such a way that it would give them political capital going into 2022. So to a large extent, the conversations by so many politicians who are critical, yet they had the time to have their say in this document, is a conversation that is taking us away from the constitutional changes to their own political ambitions. And I think it's incumbent upon Kenyans to read the document and make a decision on the document when it comes for a referendum.
All right. Gloria, let me come to you. Do you think that those who are raising these issues are representing what a lot of Kenyans are saying in terms of, look here, don't force this down our throats, give us time to read and understand, don't tell us it's our way or the highway. Do you think they have a point in doing that, or are these simply delayed tactics to make sure there's no referendum by March next year, hence, you know, spilling into the 2022 election? Gloria, are you still with us? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes. Go ahead if you've heard my question.
Yes. So I was saying it's unfortunate that both sides of the political divide are actually using this Building Bridges initiative as a tool for whatever purpose, either to, as you say, delay because they're trying to figure out, you know, whether they want to spend that money on a referendum. But also, we understand that the Building Bridges initiative was also a pet program, a pet initiative by former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, because he needs a campaign platform. He actually needs to find himself a way to come back to show that he represents the people, because he lost that once he went and did the handshake. He's now seen as a person who's in bed with, you know, the enemy. So I feel like as much as we are losing focus on what the actual content of this initiative is about, which is, it's about the people. It's about marginalized groups like the youth, like the people with disability, but all of that now has been put on the side. And when you hear people fighting, saying, you know, we need more time to read the documents, because they're trying to organize what's in it for them politically, for me, I start understanding that really it's politics. And politics will always be politics for the politicians. Whether they're talking about the lives of people, us, the commoners, the mwananchi, for them it's like, how am I going to gain mileage? So my take on this is this. First of all, it's absolutely crazy that someone would imagine a 204-page document would be read by 50 million Kenyans in a month. Yeah? It's crazy to even think that this document, by the way, it was only distributed online on soft copy, and then it was only distributed at Bomas to the few people that were there. So the responsibility to sensitize and educate the societies, our communities, has been, you know, thrown out the window, because it's not really about the people anymore. I'm expecting to see governments, if they are serious, you know, if former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and our President Uhuru Kenyatta, they're serious that really Building Bridges initiative is about the people, let them start by availing the actual copy to those people in mashinani. Let them start by translating it from English to Kiswahili, because there's also an assumption that everyone down in my constituency, constituency in Kisii County, that they actually are reading this thing in English and they understand, you know. So the first thing is the access to the information, access to this information of the Building Bridges initiative to the people, so that they can even get on board and understand what is this thing about. So for me, yes, Tanga Kieleweke, anyone else who's out here, they are using it as a sort of mileage. And the question then should be, how do we bring back the conversation to be about the people? Yeah. All
right. Dismas, you hear Raila Odinga say that a referendum can be done at a cost of 2 billion shillings. Then the IEBC chairman, Wafula Chebukati, rubbishes that, saying that even in 2010, the referendum was done at a cost of 10 billion shillings, so it costs money. Then you hear the deputy president saying that some people are looking to use a referendum, a contested referendum, to steal money. What does Wanjiku want?
Well, you've asked a very loaded question. And in my view, when you look at the BBI reports, we must run away from binary thinking, that it's black or white. People have gone through the report, either soft copy or hard copy, and they've got some views, very pertinent views. And we must run away from the probability of having a contested referendum, which is the reason as to why the two architects need to pick a small team made up of even 5 people to distill and crystallize those ideas so that we reduce the probability of having a contested referendum. People have raised fundamental issues from across the nation, and those ones can be captured in a day. They can be distilled in a day, they can be crystallized in a day, in a manner that will not affect the referendum program or the implementation program. So you've got personalities within the Raila team and the Uhuru team who have got this syndrome called know-it-all syndrome, that they know everything, and they are saying once the report is out, there is no opportunity for panel beating. And we must encourage that panel beating, but it should be done in a manner that it doesn't compromise the overall calendar. Because seated in Kisii, I gave my position, somebody else gave a position from Mandera, but now they've been harmonized, and there are some pertinent issues which must be sorted out. So anybody who is suggesting that these issues need to be harmonized is not necessarily dragging the process. They can be harmonized without interfering with the overall calendar. Now coming back to IBC, we know that IBC, if you're looking for impunity, mediocrity, and corruption, it's a domicile at IBC. So when Mr. Chebukati and company start giving contesting numbers, it's because of that behavior that we want IBC, dismantled and reconstructed afresh. Because we know incompetence reigns supreme at IBC. The cost of doing a referendum shouldn't be so high. It shouldn't be an obscene figure. But at the end of the day, what Murai is looking at is a process which captures our interest.
What are you basing that on, Dismas? What are you basing that on? Chebukati was basing it on what has been happening throughout the years, the 2005 referendum and the 2010 referendum. Are you saying that it is possible to have a referendum using, what are you basing it on?
Well, for Chebukati's reasoning, is using figures generated by IEBC itself. He's using figures generated by a system he has created in person. So he has set his own exam and he's marking it. If you want to look at the cost and compare them, he should have compared the cost of having a referendum in Kenya or the cost of having an election in Kenya with other parts of the world. How much is what is going to be the cost of the election in the US? When Switzerland have a referendum almost once every year, what is the cost? So he should be giving us a comparative analysis with other electoral bodies. Is now giving us an analysis using internally generated figures. So for Mura Baka Tomi in Kisii, she has no outside knowledge outside IBC. And because he's defending himself, he'd like to give the figures which serve his selfish interest. He should compare Kenya with other countries. Compare Kenya with Nigeria, with Switzerland, with England, with other Norway, New Zealand, Australia, so that we have international benchmarks. But now he's describing himself as a success. He's saying that he knows how to use the money in a very cost-effective manner. But for Mura, seated back in Mosocho, she has no way of forming a view.
All right. Let me ask you very quickly, let me begin with you, Hesbon. Just 1 minute. Do you think it's possible for Kenya to have a non-contested referendum, and why?
Well, I don't think it's possible to have an uncontested referendum. What I think Kenyans should strive to do is to have a referendum that is, has fidelity, a contested referendum that has fidelity to the truth of what the document has. In which case, we need to call out leaders who are misleading Kenyans. If we talk about an uncontested referendum, then we would be talking about issues that are not substantive. But the fact that these issues that you're talking about, the changes that you're proposing in the Constitution, are changes that are very substantive, that will touch on the lives of Kenyans in different ways, there will be a bit of contest. And that is what a democracy is, where different ideas contend. And the idea that wins is that idea that makes the most out of the prevailing situations for the citizens. So it can't be non-contested, but we need to reduce the contest to serious, substantive issues.
Thank you, but wasn't the BBI's main agenda to bring people together, not divide them?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. If it is bringing people together, it doesn't mean that everyone has to agree. And even during the handshake, the president said that, a handshake does not mean unanimity in everything. There are things that we'll have to contend, and we'll have to put these ideas side by side and say, what is the greater good for a greater majority in this country? We'll go with the greater good for a greater majority. But we'll have to take interest of the minority and respect the wishes of the minorities and have a way of working with the wishes of the minority, even though we'll go with the majority. I mean, that's the essence of a democracy. It's not a question of people just agreeing for the sake of it.
Okay, Gloria, what is your prediction?
Yes.
Will we have a contested or consensus?
You know, you asked if we think it's possible, and I actually think it's possible because, as you said, the Building Bridges initiative is supposed to unite Kenyans, and we've all agreed, at least all the leaders that I even had at Bomas, all agreed that it's time that we dealt with the issues, the 9-point issues that are being highlighted in this initiative. And I believe every time I'm getting information about this, I'm being corrected when I say the youth agenda is not really being said. I'm being told those are administrative issues. Those are legislative issues. Those are this. So I believe that if we can first start by unpacking that BBI, which means reading it, sensitizing the people, and then separating the administrative issues, put them in one, silo, going to the legislative issues, which, by the way, really can pass. You know, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying. We have them, administrative, legislative, and then we have the constitutional amendments. So if you ask me, those issues that are touching on the constitutional amendments, first of all, I believe conversations have already been had by these politicians, by these leaders, and by the initiators of this handshake and the BBI. So I believe that literally it will take them one weekend to go and sit somewhere in a boardroom. Let them negotiate on whatever they are negotiating. After all, whether we go on a referendum or not, whatever will be tabled will still be negotiated at one level. Let they come to an agreement on what, bare minimums, and, everybody's like, this is actually where we want to go as a country. And I do believe that they could come out of that kind of a sit down with a consensus document, which will initially be, we don't need to spend this kind of money in a referendum because we are in a place where we need to go into economic recovery. So I really believe the same way they had the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and the President go and shake hands, and we all sort of conformed into this uniting factor, and, let's all come together and sing Kumbaya. They can now add in there Musalia Mudavadi, they add in there Alfred Mutua, they add whoever, they reach 15 people who they think that these are now the heavyweights of this country. They go to Bomas again for a 2-day retreat. They sit together and they come with a consensus document.
All right. Mark Bichachi, contested referendum or consensus, which way is Kenya likely to go?
If you look at the issues that are being raised by the people who say that they need a consensus, there are issues that are not quite major in the wholeness of the document. For example, the issue of the ombudsman. If the appointing authority is moved, let's say, away from the presidency to parliament, would they be satisfied? If they are looking at the question of inclusivity, do they want the president or the presidency to say that certain cabinet ministers can come from opposition? All of those things are actually quite easy to solve. But I must say that even if you come to that consensus, I do not think that this will be an uncontested referendum, because you've got certain people who oppose BBI because they oppose BBI. They just look at Uhuru and Raila and they feel very bad in their hearts. And therefore they will oppose it regardless. Now, the question really is, can the political class get a settlement for BBI? Yes. But are there still parts of the country that will want to oppose BBI? Then yes, you've got such people who stayed away from BBI completely and opposed it from the beginning. And I'll give you an example. Someone like Martha Karua, I do not think if you changed all the articles she's complaining about, she will then support the BBI. I do not see that happening.
All right. Dismas, what is your take on that? Contest or consensus?
We need a consensus document, and in my view, Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta must invite the Deputy President William Samoei Ruto, Musalia Mudavadi, Wetangula, the politician with the biggest and heaviest political capital, into a room and agree on the contentious issues so that they can come up with a consensus position. And I'm hoping that that's what they're doing this morning in Naivasha, because all the party leaders have been invited and members of parliament. They come up with a consensus document. The issues that people are talking about are very minimal, they're very minor, and they can be sorted out.
Are you hopeful? Sorry to interrupt. Are you hopeful from Naivasha, where it was the same place where the MPs went and massacred, so to say, pundits say, and experts, massacred the Bomas draft and removed things that they are now trying to fix.
Well, you know, the people who are going to who are in Naivasha today are the ones who drive the nation's agenda. Now, if they agree on a position and then one of them decides to take a back seat and say, I don't support that position, then the rest of the Kenyans would have known that the person who is not happy with the consensus position wants to use BBI as a special purpose vehicle for 2022. So those are the people that will be identified and isolated, and we know that these people do not care about our national and public interest. But if in the Naivasha meeting today, they come up with amendments which are consistent with our public and national interest, then the BBI is going to be a wrap. And in my view, anybody who thinks Kenya is a good nation and they want to stay there, anybody who identifies with our public and national interest, then they must present their positions today at the Naivasha meeting so that we have that consensus document. We don't have time to run around in a contested, referendum, people spending a lot of resources. And, these are the issues that President Kenyatta spoke about, that we like engaging in a lot of politics. But again, I'm informed that there are a number of political players in Kenya who have commercialized politics. They know that if you have a consensus document, probability of making a back out of the BBI is almost zero. So they'd want to encourage the main political players to have a contested referendum so that we can go around.
All right, we'll keep an eye on all that.
And everything.
Thank you. You're watching Inside Politics here on KTN News. Many thanks for staying with us. Time for a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll be focusing on the 2022 general election and the presidential race and Deputy President William Ruto's forays into central Kenya that are causing jitters among political leadership there. Stay with us.
This to be a unifying process, uniting the people of Kenya. Once that is done, Kenyans will decide who is going to be a leader in 2022. We don't want to talk about 2022 now. We are talking about Kenya of today. The Jubilee government, and the leaders are here, have their 4-point agenda. Wamalize hiyo kwanza. Hapana ambia sisi vile mtafanya 2022. Sasa hivi fanyeni sasa mnulize kwanza. Sisi wako pamoja, wako pair. Wako pair. Wewe umekuwa na bibi, mmezaa mtoto, unaona mtoto amekuwa ni kichaa. Sasa wewe unasema hiyo si mtoto yangu.